A new colony. Nestled in the verdant valley of an alien world, the human colony of New Eden was thriving. Giant domes sparkled under twin suns, sheltering hydroponics bays and fabrication plants. Children played in the purple grass between prefab hab units while their parents went about their duties, working to build a new life light years from Earth. Despite mankind's technological prowess that allowed them to cross the stars, New Eden was still a fledgling outpost, lacking the population and military might of older human colonies. This vulnerability weighed on the mind of Administrator Jenna Weston as she looked over the latest security reports in her office. More perimeter alarms triggered last night, frowned her head of security, a grizzled ex-Marine named Tex. No visuals on the intruders, but they're getting bolder, coming right up to the sensor grid. Could it be indigenous wildlife? Jenna asked, scrolling through the log of incidents that had been steadily increasing over the past month. Unlikely. The eggheads say the biggest critters on this rock are about the size of squirrels. Nah, this feels targeted. Somebody's out there scoping us out. A chill ran down Jenna's spine at the implication. When the colony ship departed Earth, this planet was believed to be uninhabited, but they were a long way from home, and the galaxy was full of unknowns. We need eyes on the intruders. Assemble a recon team. Drones and ground-penetrating scanners. I want to know who or what we're dealing with ASAP. Tex nodded grimly as he turned to carry out her orders. Jenna had a feeling that their mysterious visitors would soon be unmasked, for better or worse. As the sun set over the peaceful colony, a group of scientists and security personnel assembled at the perimeter, loading survey drones and sensor equipment into all-terrain vehicles. Tex briefed the team, his face grim. All right, folks, listen up. We've got an unidentified presence snooping around our borders. Could be wildlife, could be something else. Our job is to find out who they are and what they want. Stay sharp and don't take any chances. With that, the recon team rolled out into the alien night, ready to confront the unknown. Floodlights cast shifting shadows across the landscape as they bounced along, scanning for any signs of their mysterious visitors. Suddenly, a scientist monitoring the drone feed called out in alarm. Movement, 2 o'clock. Multiple contacts emerging from the tree line. The team screeched to a halt, piling out of the vehicles and readying their stunners. Hearts pounded as they peered into the darkness, catching glimpses of hulking shapes shambling closer. A voice called out from the night, deep and guttural, speaking in broken English. Humans, you trespass on Zorlak land. Submit and give tribute or face destruction. The team exchanged nervous glances as Tex stepped forward, one hand on his holstered sidearm. I'm afraid you're mistaken, friend, he called back. This planet is uncharted and unclaimed. We're a peaceful colony and not looking for trouble. Why don't you come out so we can talk this through? Harsh laughter was the only response, along with the crunch of heavy footsteps. Peaceful. Ha. We watch you, see your ships, your weapons. You expand like virus. Now you give us supplies, metals, or we raze your pitiful colony to the ground. A dozen hulking shapes emerged from the tree line, green scales glinting in the floodlights. The creatures were vaguely reptilian, walking upright but hunched forward. Scavenged armor and weapons bristled from their frames, giving them a ramshackle yet menacing appearance. Tex's eyes narrowed as he took in the sight. He had seen creatures like this before, on the fringes of human space. Raiders, pirates, bullies who preyed on the weak to steal what they could not build themselves. A fire ignited in his chest, an ancient human response to witnessing injustice. I'm going to give you one chance, Tex growled, his hand closing around the butt of his pistol. Walk away. This doesn't have to get ugly. The lead Zorlak threw back his head in mocking laughter, baring needle-like teeth. Stupid human. You have no idea what you face. We are Zorlak. This sector belongs to us. Any who do not kneel will be crushed. Is that so? Tex replied coldly as he drew his weapon in one smooth motion, the whine of capacitors filling the night air. Well, I guess it's time someone taught you a lesson. See, we humans have no tolerance for bullies. With that, a staccato drumbeat of energy weapons fire split the night, heralding a new chapter for the fledgling colony and the galaxy at large. First contact. Administrator Jenna Weston fought to maintain her composure as Tex finished his report on the violent first contact with the alien species now known as the Zorlax. The security footage was hard to watch. Hulking reptilian brutes exchanging fire with the recon team, their scavenged weapons thankfully outclassed by the humans' advanced sidearms and drones. 3 Zorlax lay dead, and 1 was stunned and taken captive. Miraculously, the human team escaped unscathed. What have we learned from the prisoner? Jenna asked, rubbing her temples. The adrenaline of the past few hours was fading, replaced by a deep weariness. It's called Crag, Tex replied, sliding a holo tablet across the desk. Once I convinced it that cooperation would be less painful than the alternative, it started singing like a canary. The administrator flicked through Crag's testimony, each new revelation making her stomach sink further. The Zorlax were a species of nomadic raiders, technologically primitive but financially ambitious. For generations, they had brutally exploited the other sentient races in the sector, extorting resources and slaves. Those who cannot defend themselves pay in blood and treasure. Crag had sneered through the translator, even as it sat restrained. The strong take what they want. The Zorlax are strong. You humans are weak. You will pay tribute or suffer the consequences. Jenna shook her head in disgust as she read the long list of atrocities the Zorlax had wrought on their alien neighbors. Entire species had been subjugated, their cultures crushed, their people broken and enslaved. The Galactic community, it seemed, operated under the harshest laws of the jungle. We need to inform Earth Command right away, Jenna said grimly, composing her thoughts. If these Zorlax are half as dangerous as they claim, the colony could be at risk. We should request an evacuation until the threat can be assessed and neutralized. Tex frowned, crossing his burly arms. With all due respect, Ma'am, I don't think that's the right call. We've seen this kind of scum before out on the rim. Give them an inch, and they'll take a light year. If we cut and run, it'll only embolden them. The administrator paused, considering the unspoken implication in his words. New Eden was not just a collection of prefab habs and hydroponic domes. It was a promise, a new beginning for the brave souls who had left Earth far behind to forge their own destiny. To abandon it all in the face of adversity felt like a betrayal of that pioneer spirit. What are you suggesting, Tex? Jenna asked carefully, already suspecting the answer. The old Marine leaned forward, a fire burning in his eyes. We stand our ground. Show these purple-bellied bastards that humanity doesn't bow to anyone. We've got the tech advantage. A few targeted strikes on their ships and bases should make them think twice about messing with us. Jenna rubbed her chin, her mind racing. A month ago, the notion of her tiny colony standing alone against alien raiders would have been laughable. But after seeing the capabilities of their technology firsthand, and more importantly, the courage of her people, a defiant plan began to take shape. All right, Tex. I can't officially condone any military action on behalf of the colony without Earth Command's approval. But if you were to assemble a volunteer militia and secure our interests proactively, I wouldn't stand in your way. A wolfish grin spread across the old soldier's face as he stood, snapping a salute. Understood, Administrator. I'll make sure our message gets through loud and clear. As the door slid shut behind him, Jenna exhaled slowly. The die was cast. New Eden would not cower before bullies and brutes. If the galaxy operated by the law of the jungle, then humanity would prove itself the apex predator. Standing up to the bullies, the Zorlax raider snarled in frustration as yet another salvo from its jury-rigged cannons went wide, searing harmlessly past the human strike craft. These hairless apes had only just arrived on the galactic scene, and yet they darted through space like silvered fish, their sleek ships running rings around his lumbering vessel. "Concentrate fire on the leader," the Zorlak captain growled to his gunnery crews. "Shields double front. Prepare boarding parties. Today we feast on human flesh." But the humans had other ideas. Tex grinned savagely as his targeting computer achieved lock, the Zorlak ship looming large in his HUD. Fox 3, he called out over the comms. "Package is away. Crank up the jam and watch the fireworks." A flash of azure light leaped from the strike craft's undercarriage, an advanced missile locking onto the Zorlak ship's drive emissions. The raiders never even saw it coming. One moment they were spewing threats and invectives over the comm waves. The next their world dissolved into fire and shrapnel as the missile punched clean through their shields and detonated in the heart of their reactor. The dying ship spun lazily, spewing atmosphere and gurning crew. Tex watched grimly, his finger poised over the trigger, ready to finish the job. But no further resistance came from the gutted raider. It seemed the only thing the Zorlaks hated more than humans was a fair fight. "Raider neutralized," Tex reported back to New Eden Colony. "Scans show multiple slave transports in their hold along with stolen supplies. Guess we caught these bastards red-handed." "Well done, Tex," Administrator Jenna replied over the comlink, her voice thick with emotion. "Those supplies will go a long way to helping our growth. And the slaves, God, I can only imagine what they've been through. We'll bring them back to the colony for medical attention and debriefing. Our linguists are chomping at the bit to establish dialogue. Still can't believe we've got genuine alien refugees on our hands. Just treat them with kindness and respect," Jenna admonished gently. "After what they've endured, human compassion may be the most alien thing of all." Over the next few weeks, New Eden became a hive of activity as the colony worked to process and care for scores of alien refugees from a half-dozen species. Their stories were depressingly similar. The Zorlaks would raid their homeworlds or trading ships, carrying off anything of value, including sapient beings to be used as slave labor or worse. One refugee in particular, a spindly insectoid creature named Zrecht, took a keen interest in his human hosts. As soon as the linguists established a reliable translation matrix, he peppered them with questions about human history, culture, and technology. "You have grown so fast, spread so far," he chittered in amazement as a smiling Jenna showed him around the colony's fabrication plants. "Yet you do not conquer as the Zorlaks do. You do not take slaves. Why?" The administrator paused, considering her answer carefully. "Humanity has had its share of bullies and tyrants," she replied slowly. "But we've learned over time that cooperation and consent are more powerful than coercion. When all people are free to reach their full potential, society benefits as a whole." Zrecht nodded, his compound eyes glinting. "A beautiful sentiment. If only the rest of the galaxy shared it. You have made an enemy of the Zorlaks. They will come for you in force." A hardness entered Jenna's expression as she turned to face her guest. "Let them come. This colony stands for the values of the Free Terran Charter. We will not cower before those who would make slaves and subjects of us, and will extend our protection to any species that joins us in the fight against tyranny." The insectoid reflexively crossed his upper limbs in what the linguists tentatively identified as a sign of respect. "Bold words, Administrator. Perhaps the humans are the champions the oppressed have long awaited. But steel yourselves, hard times are ahead." Prophetic words, as it turned out. For even as the human and alien staff broke bread together in New Eden's sparkling domes, Zorlak warships were massing at the edge of the system. A brutal fist aimed at the heart of humanity's fledgling values. The line in the sand. "She's a beaut, isn't she?" Tex beamed, running a gauntleted hand along the gleaming hull of the APC, freshly fabricated and bristling with human ingenuity. "The eggheads are calling it the Badger. Armor that'll shrug off anything short of a nuke, grav thrusters for all-terrain maneuvering, railguns that'll core a Zorlak APC like an apple. I'll take a dozen." Jenna smiled wanly at the old soldier's enthusiasm, even as a tangle of worries constricted her chest. In the month since their public declaration to protect refugees from Zorlak oppression, New Eden had transformed from a peaceful frontier outpost to a hive of military industry practically overnight. Auto factories that once churned out modular HAB units and hydroponic trays now stamped out rifles, drones, and body armor. The colony's modest defense fleet had tripled in size, bolstered by newly trained recruits and advanced strike craft fresh from the nanoforges. And the refugees kept coming. Nearly 1,000 at last count, hailing from a dozen systems, all bearing tales of Zorlak cruelty and subjugation. Zrecht hadn't been exaggerating. It seemed half the sector lived in fear of the reptilian brutes. Administrator Jenna Weston should have been proud of her colony's humanitarian mission, but each defiant speech and bold proclamation felt like another layer of dirt shoveled from her own grave. "I never wanted this, you know," she murmured, watching the badger thrum to life on its graph plates. "This was supposed to be a place of exploration and growth, a new beginning. Now I've turned it into an armed camp." Tex laid a reassuring hand on her shoulder, meeting her gaze with a flat smile. "We all heard the stories, boss. Seen the evidence. You're doing the right thing. The human thing. We couldn't call ourselves Terrans if we turned our backs on those in need." Jenna sighed, idly watching a mixed crew of humans and aliens running clash drills in sparkling new combat exoskeletons. "I know, Tex. I know. But that doesn't make the weight any easier to bear. If this all goes sideways, if I've led our people to ruin out of some naive crusading impulse." The old soldier gripped her shoulder tighter, his voice low and forceful. "Hey now, none of that. We all knew the risks when we signed up for this one-way trip. Every soul in this colony believes in what we're doing here, in what you're doing." He gestured at the bustling base, grav tanks hovering alongside Zrecht's crab-like mech suits, while human technicians in exoskeletons welded shoulder-mounted cannons to both. The Zorlaks aren't just a threat to New Eden. They're a threat to every free-thinking, peace-loving species in this sector. And humanity is all that stands in their way. We're the line in the sand, Jenna. And God help any scaly bastard dumb enough to cross it. A wry smile tugged at the corner of the administrator's mouth. Leave it to Tex to boil an impossibly complex interstellar conflict down to a pithy slogan. Still, there was truth in the old warhorse's words. Like it or not, by sheltering those that would oppose the Zorlaks, New Eden had become a symbol, a promise, one she was duty-bound to keep. Her brief moment of introspection was rudely shattered by a wailing klaxon. Threat alarms. Adrenaline flooded her system as she whirled to the nearest intercom panel, slapping it active. "Report. Deep-range scans have picked up multiple Dreadnought-class Zorlak ships entering the system," came the harried reply, the voice of the young officer cracking with stress. "Their course projection terminates at New Eden. ETA to orbital insertion. 4 hours." A chill ran down Jenna's spine as Tex exploded into action beside her, barking orders to scramble defenses and prep the colony for siege. She had expected reprisal from the Zorlaks, but not so soon or in such force. Dreadnoughts were their heaviest hitters, each one capable of reducing the colony to molten slag. "Get me a line to their commander," Jenna said with more calm than she felt. "Let's see if we can't resolve this without bloodshed." The view screen crackled and spat before resolving into the sneering visage of a Zorlak warlord, his scales particularly dark and scarred. "I am Commander Zorgas of the Zorlak 7th Battle Fleet," the alien rumbled. "Your colony has unlawfully interfered in our sovereign affairs by harboring fugitives and stolen property. You will surrender the refugees and submit to Zorlak rule immediately or face annihilation." Jenna forced herself to meet Zorgas's merciless gaze without flinching. "This is Administrator Weston of New Eden. With respect, we do not recognize your claim of sovereignty over the free peoples of this sector. Every sapient species has an inalienable right to self-determination, free of coercion and tyranny." Zorgas barked harsh laughter, baring rows of needle teeth. The only rights are those taken and held by force. You humans are new to this galaxy. You do not yet understand your place. Allow us to educate you." The warlord lunged forward, his snout filling the screen. "This is your last chance, human. Surrender the refugees or be destroyed. You have 1 hour to comply." With that, the view screen went dark, leaving Jenna in a boiling sea of her own adrenaline and fear. On pure autopilot, she turned to Tex. "Get everyone to the shelters. Arm and equip every able body. And pray that when this is over, there's enough of us left to bury the dead." The old soldier nodded grimly, his prosthetic hand flexing into a fist of whirring servos. "We'll give them a fight they'll never forget. No one endangers our people. Not on our watch." As the evacuation alarm began to blare and soldiers, human and alien alike, rushed to their battle stations, Jenna indulged in one last moment of desperate prayer, calling upon every deity humanity had ever believed in. "Please," she prayed, tears stinging her eyes even as her jaw clenched in defiance. "If any justice exists in this merciless universe, let it be enough to see us through this darkest hour. Let the courage of those willing to stand against cruelty triumph, just this once. For if it did not, then New Eden, and the light of human compassion it represented, would be extinguished forever, ground beneath the iron heel of unending alien oppression." The wrath of Terra. The first bombardment wave struck New Eden's perimeter with the fury of an angry god. Grav tanks overturned like toys. Modular structures collapsed into flaming rubble. Screams of the wounded and dying filled the smoky air. But the humans were far from defenseless. All across the colony, concealed silos gaped open to disgorge swarming missile barrages, the colony's AIs slaving every warhead to a different target. Kinetic cannons boomed in counter-battery fire, hurling hypervelocity slugs into the onrushing dropships. And at the center of it all stood Tex, power armor shimmering, barking orders to his militia. "Focus fire on their troop landers. Badgers, cover that flank. Move those civilians to the shelters. Go, go, go." Jenna watched the tactical displays with a sick mix of awe and horror as the battle unfolded. The Zorlax had the edge in numbers and brute force, but the humans were putting up a hell of a fight. Casualties streamed in from both sides as the invaders crashed against New Eden's defenses like a scaly tide. In high orbit, the situation was just as grim. The human defense fleet ducked and weaved valiantly among the lumbering Zorlak dreadnoughts, peppering them with pinpoint railgun strikes and nuclear-pumped X-ray lasers. But inevitably, the sheer volume of return fire took its toll. One by one, the brave human ships winked out under the Zorlak onslaught. "We can't stop those dreadnoughts with what we have on hand," Tex growled over the comm, ducking as a plasma blast sizzled overhead. "If they get in range, it's all over. We need a miracle." A crazy, desperate idea crystallized in Jenna's mind, a gamble so reckless it bordered on suicidal. But if it worked? "Tex, do you remember that experimental jump drive the eggheads were working on? The one based on alien quantum entanglement tech?" The old soldier swore colorfully. "You mean the one they said had a 50% chance of scattering your component atoms across the cosmos? What about it?" Jenna swallowed hard. "I need you to load it into a Badger APC along with our heaviest warhead. Then I need a volunteer to pilot it." A long silence crackled over the line. Then a single word, exhaled like a prayer: "Godspeed." Mere minutes later, the lone Badger APC scorched out of New Eden's launch base, the jury-rigged jump drive thrumming ominously in its armored hold. The shouts and explosions of the raging battle seemed to fade away as the vehicle soared into the skies, the edges of its grav plates starting to glow an unsettling blue. "Almost in position," Tex grated over the comm, the telemetry from his power armor spiking. Jenna blanched as she realized the magnitude of what her old friend was attempting. He was on that Badger himself. It would be a one-way trip. "All hands, brace for spatial distortion," Jenna warned over the colony PA. And Godspeed, Tex. See you on the other side. With a flash of ethereal light, the Badger APC disappeared from conventional spacetime. A moment later, a far brighter flare erupted within the heart of the Zorlak formation. Sensors struggled to parse the readings. It was as if a piece of New Eden had suddenly materialized deep inside one of the alien dreadnoughts. Half of the enormous ship simply vanished, sheared off by the displacement of mass as the Badger APC forced itself into being inside its hull. For one frozen moment, the two halves drifted apart, molten edges dribbling streams of vaporized metal. Then the warhead detonated, and the dreadnought became a miniature sun. The thermonuclear explosion ripped through the packed Zorlak fleet like an invisible fist, crushing bulkheads and boiling crew. Uncomprehending alien commanders stared in horror as their mighty armada crumpled and burned, devastated by an attack they could scarcely understand. It was more than a military defeat. It was a humbling, a shattering of the myth of Zorlak invincibility. The surviving ships broke and ran, discipline lost in the mad scramble to flee this corner of space that had suddenly become far more trouble than it was worth. In their wake, they left a battered but unbroken New Eden, its defenders bloodied but unbowed. Jenna wept openly as the tattered militia raised a cheer. The colony had held the line. The light of Terra, the promise of man, would not be extinguished this day. In time, the refugees would return to their homes, bearing word of the heroic humans who had turned back the Zorlak scourge. New Eden would become a beacon of hope, a shining example that the cycle of galactic oppression could be broken. And Tex, his sacrifice would be immortalized in the annals of history. The indomitable human spirit, the refusal to bend knee to any tyrant, no matter the odds or cost. For that was the true strength of humanity, the administrator mused as she watched the sun rise over her battered but beautiful colony, reborn in the fires of defiance. Not the sharpness of their swords nor the thunder of their guns, but the courage of their convictions. The dream of a galaxy where none need live in fear, where all were free to reach their full potential. That was a light that would never be extinguished, and she would ensure it burned bright for generations to come.